For Lori and myself, we want to say welcome and thank you. And I asked that question, what's the worst feedback you've ever received in an annual review? And as I was putting this together, I had kind of a funny idea. So I asked AI to help me. And so I had Gemini make me a kind of a funny cartoon in the office space kind of vibe, right? And so essentially what this leader is telling his employee is, hey, so I want you to invisibly innovate, right? That is not good advice. And so if you take nothing else away from this, don't give that, right? And then also saying, hey, I'm giving you meats because I don't remember what you did. Do people do lots of stuff throughout the year? And are there things that you forget? Absolutely. There's no way to track every single thing that they do, but when they do something amazing, which is the ideal case, right? Or when something doesn't go as well as you would like, make a little note just so that as you start putting your stuff together for the annual review, you have something to look back on. So it's not just, I don't know, so I'm going to give you a meets expectations. That is not good feedback. Huh. All right. So I'm going to be your host today, assuming I make it through and I don't start choking or my eyes start watering. I'm here in Central Texas, and so we have to deal with the cedars allergies this time of year. So I'm your host. I'm Eric. I'm a 5392. But today I also have Lori with me. She's an 8662. So Lori's man in the chat. I'm taking care of the of this part here, talking to y'all. But if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. In the chat, Lori will either answer the question or she'll kick it over to me and I'll answer it for everybody. So we're here to talk about how do we make impactful, much better annual reviews and how do we make them fun and easier. But I want to start with a quick poll. So we're going to pop this up. And what I want to know is, do you enjoy doing annual reviews? You only have three options. Yes, no, or what's an annual review? Unsurprisingly, the no's are in the lead for do you like doing annual reviews? And we did have one vote for what's an annual review. I appreciate that. We got a couple in the chat. So Donovan likes them, but Steve does not like them. Totally okay. All right, we're gonna give it, let's call it another 10 seconds, and then we're gonna close it down. We'll share the results with everyone. All right, we're gonna share those results. So as you can see, most people, almost two-thirds of you said no, you don't like doing annual reviews. Based on my interactions with leaders throughout the years, that's not surprising at all. It totally makes sense. And think about it. How often do you do annual reviews? Probably one time a year, probably, late December, early January-ish, somewhere in there. And so if you don't do it all the time, it's hard to get really good at it and to add some skills. And sometimes it's really frustrating, right? Because you have to go back through your files and figure out, what am I going to say? How do I help them? What did they do that was great this year? All of that fun stuff. And so as leaders, we need to figure out, right, how do we thrive when we're delivering feedback during an annual review instead of just survive? And when you signed up, we asked all of you, what are you interested in or what's your reason for joining the webinar? And a lot of you had questions about how do I help my employees thrive instead of survive, right? Because that's what we really want to do. We don't really want our folks to look like this poor lady on the left there, right? Where papers are stacking up, she's bent over the desk, really frustrated. That's someone who just goes to work and every day sucks. And that is no fun, right? Because day after day after day after day, that really begins to wear on you. You're not going to get your best from that person. I'm sure that lady has some amazing talents, but she's not using them if she's in that environment all the time. Instead, we want to get into thrive. And so that's true for us as leaders as we deliver this feedback, but also this is the goal, what we're trying to figure out for those folks that we lead is, all right, so as we start to look from thrive to survive and, back and forth and all of that, we have to do annual reviews, right? And I just found some random annual review on Google and they look something like this, right? They have a whole bunch of stuff and I got to rate somebody, needs improvement. They meet expectations. They're doing pretty well. All those have some kind of scoring matrix. If that's what you use and that's kind of what your HR team has decided, cool. I'm not saying throw that away. You got to work with kind of company policy, so that's fine. So go through, identify what this person does great, where they need some improvement, all of that stuff, and rank it. But as you now start to look and say, all right, how do I now affect this person? How do I affect and get the outcomes that I'm looking for? We need to look at the strengths that each person has. Because if we can get them to lean into those strengths, that's how we move more over into, exceeds expectations or outstanding. All right, so what I can tell you is all of us have a whole bunch of strengths locked inside of us. We all actually have our own secret sauce that makes each of us who we are. And if we can unleash those, that's how you unleash the amazing inside of each person. So we have thinking or cognitive strengths, we have feeling or affective strengths, and then we have conative or doing strengths. And deploying all of those, like I said, is that's when we're at our best. I'm going to go a little bit deeper so you kind of understand what these strengths are. So, on the thinking or the cognitive strength side, natural intelligence, right? We all have varying levels of natural intelligence, and that's part of what goes into makes us who we are. Then we have knowledge. We've learned stuff. Maybe we went to a class, maybe we read a book, listened to a podcast, took a training course, but we've acquired knowledge over time and we built skills, probably because we practice stuff over and over and over again. And then we have experiences, right? Hopefully, as you're doing stuff, things work and you learn, hey, I do more of that, or things don't work and maybe I should try a different angle. And then we also have habits that we've built. I'm pretty sure we all brushed our teeth this morning, right? Because that's a habit that was built when we were little kids. You have habits like that you built professionally that are part of what make you successful. So the cognitive bucket or part of strengths that you have, it's all about what you can do. Then the second component, which is the feeling or the affect. Things like personality live there, right? So is this person extroverted or are they introverted? Are they steady, stable, patient? Or are they like me and Lori and incredibly impatient, right? Then you have things like motivation, right? Every one of us has a reason we get up and do the stuff that we do. So we need to understand what motivates us. And as a leader, we need to understand what motivates that person. We have preferences, things that we enjoy, things we're like, well, it's not my favorite, but I still got to do it. And then you have values. You have values as an individual, within your family. Most organizations have some form of corporate values that they live by. And you have emotions because we're all people, right? Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're mad and excited. And everywhere along that spectrum, that's okay. We need to understand where is that person at in their emotions right now. And everyone is going to have emotions. Even people that seem like they're robots still have emotions. They're just better at kind of controlling them or using their poker face. The affective part of the mind is all about what you want to do. And then there's this third part. It's called the conative part of the mind. It's when you're striving, how do you take action? How do you get stuff done? So if it's a random Thursday and I call Lori, I say, hey, Lori, I need your help with this. I know she's going to hit me with a bunch of questions and we're going to dig into the details because that's how Lori solves problems. That's how she takes action. And I can actually rely on that. I can rely on her for that and I can use it to my advantage when we're working together, when we're doing reviews, those types of things. All right, so all of these strengths combined are what make you you, and the people that you lead, that's what makes them as well. So now, as you start to look at those areas where, hey, maybe they're not doing it the way I need them to, or they're not performing at the level that I want, you can use this framework of strengths to help you identify how can I help them. So think of it like this. If, let's say, they're missing some skills or some knowledge or some experience, that falls into that cognitive bucket. And the cool part is, this is the easiest one to change. If you don't know how to do something, well, let's get you in a class. Let's help you practice doing that thing. And then you're going to learn how to accomplish whatever that thing is that you need to improve. But that's how you identify, is this a cognitive issue? Then on the affective side, right? What if someone isn't motivated? Can I come in and do a rah rah win one for the Gipper speech? Yes. Will I get a little bit of a bump? Probably, but it's not going to be sustainable long term. We have to figure out what motivates that individual, and we got to press those buttons to get them to perform at their best. So, cognitive, right? Are they missing some skills? They need to learn some stuff. Affect, it's all right, how do we motivate them or how do we tap into their personality? Then there's this third part, the conative or the doing. And this one is the hardest to change because our cognitive strengths don't change over time. When Lori was little Lori running around on the playground, she was an eight in fact finder asking a whole bunch of questions. Now that she's grown up Lori, she runs around and she asks a bunch of questions. She digs into the details. When she's retired Lori, she's still going to dig into the details and ask a bunch of questions. Same's true for me, true for you, everyone that you lead. This part doesn't change. So this is the part that we're going to focus on and how do we affect those results? All right, so it's a quick kind of recap of Kolbe or overview of Kolbe. We all take action in four ways. That's those four colorful bars that all of us have on our Kolbe A results. The red one, fact finder, we all have to gather information. We just do it at differing levels. Follow through is about organizing and designing. Quick start is about dealing with risk and uncertainty. And that yellow one, implementer, is handling space intangibles. So every Kolbe result you ever see is going to have those same four colorful bars. Every person you ever interact with is going to have these four ways of taking actions. But where the differences arise is in the numbers. So let's say you're a 2 in fact finder or an 8 in fact finder. The great part is both of those are absolutely strength. If you're a 2 in fact finder, your strength to simplify is amazing and we need to use that. If you're an 8 in fact finder and you specify, that is just as amazing. Just these people take action in different ways. Lori would differ on that, given that she's an 8 in fact finder. However, we all have our own bias, right? Every person thinks their way is the best way. It's not unique. All humans have this, right? We all look at things from our perspective. Just know, right? Folks have different ways of getting things done, and that's okay. That difference is actually their superpower. So when you look at someone's Kolbe results, if you can just guide them to be more of them, right? If I can tell Lori, hey, Lori, just be more of an 8662, Lori's going to be awesome and she's going to thrive. If she tells me, Eric, I need you to be more of a 5392, I'm going to thrive. That's where I'm going to be amazing. Now, do we sometimes need to flex? And do I sometimes need to be an 8 in follow through instead of a 3 in follow through? Yes. But if I do that all day long, that's a rough day. I'm going to be struggling all day long and just kind of sucking it up. And that's where I'm in survival mode instead of just thriving. So when I talk about kind of leaning into your strengths and just kind of being you, I know that sometimes is a little squishy or it feels a little like, that's like pie in the sky. I don't know if that actually works. And maybe a quote like this pops in your mind, right? Where it's don't pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. Is there some truth in that? Yes, absolutely, right? We're all going to face trials and tribulations, and we need to be strong enough to power through. Or, right, here's another one. That what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yes, there's some truth in that as well. But if you're fighting for your life all day, every day, that's no good, right? That's where you're going to be stressed out. Instead, I just want to reframe as you think about strengths and overcoming challenges. And rather than I need to fight against them, instead, use your strengths to your advantage, right? Take advantage of those strengths that you have. It's already in there. We just got to unlock them or unleash them. So that's how we're going to reframe this as whatever strengths those folks around us have, let's help them take advantage of those strengths. All right. As I said, right, I know sometimes it's a little squishy or it feels a little pie in the sky. So I have a practical exercise to show you what this looks like. I'd like all of you to grab something to write with and something to write on. It could be a sticky note, it could be a tablet, a piece of paper, but I want you to grab some kind of writing utensil and something to write on. What I want you to do first is simply print your first and your last name. All right. Now what I'd like you to do is just underneath where you printed your first and your last name, I want you to do that again, but I want you to switch hands. So if you're right-handed, write it with your left hand. If you're left-handed, write it with your right hand, just underneath where you printed your first and last name the first time. All right, so there we go. Lori, can you zoom in a little bit? There we go. All right. So first time through, pretty solid. Second time through, it's a little iffy, right? But Lori, you're not alone. I did this too, and that's what mine looks like. And I'll bet most of you in this call look something like that. Where first time through, yeah, looks great, like our normal handwriting. Second time through, it looks like a 5-year-old wrote it, right? So if I came to you and I said, hey, Lori, I really need you to up your game and you need to really get better with writing with your left hand. Could you do it?
Yeah.
Yes, right? You could. You're a smart, capable person. You could get that done and you could practice over and over and over again. It's kind of a waste of time. Instead, let's just get you to lean into writing with your right hand. That's the same concept. Instead of fighting against it and trying to train our weaknesses, let's lean into our strengths, what we're already amazing at, right? Because, like I said, whatever those four numbers are, those are your strengths. That's what unlocks your superpower. That's where you get to break out the cape and the mask and save the day. So when you lean into those gifts that you have or that your team has. And as you start to do this, right, we talked about it. Sometimes we have our own perspective. And so we try to give advice because we're trying to do our best, but it's misguided. So here are two people, real people on my screen. One of them is me, one of them is my father. So as you look at those, you can see those are wildly different. So when I was growing up, my dad did the dad thing, right? He was trying to give me advice about school and life and sports and girls and all of the things. And so he gave me advice from his perspective. He was trying to do the right thing. He's trying to help his son grow and learn and all of those things. But what I can tell you is his advice is not very good for me. I heard this phrase on my screen so many times, there's no way to count how many times I heard proper planning prevents poor performance. My dad added an extra P in there, but we're not gonna talk about that one on the webinar, right? For him, this is awesome advice, and that's part of how he was successful. But because we're so different, he was actually leading me down the wrong path. He was pushing me towards underperformance instead of high performance. Not his fault. He was trying to do his best. He just didn't know what my strengths are. So, right, if we can look and say, all right, not just how I would do this, but what's the right advice for this person? Now we can start to give really solid advice when we're talking about how to improve in whatever that area is. All right, so what are some tips, some easy ways you can use the Kolbe info to give advice to your team? So we're just going to go mode by mode here. If you look at Fact Finder, if someone is a 7 through 10 in Fact Finder, give them this advice. Question frequently and thoroughly. Justify the why. I actually want Lori to ask a bunch of questions and dig into those specifics because that's unleashing her strengths. And if I'm asking her for something or if I need her to do something, I need to let her know the why. If I do that, she's much more likely to buy in, jump in, and we can work on that thing. Other things we want them to do, we want them to weigh the pros and the cons. Very few things are purely pro or purely con, right? And so you have to figure out what's the right balance where the pros outweigh the cons enough. 7 through 10s in Fact Finder are great at that. Or let them define terms or define terms for them before you start digging into it. Because if you don't, they're like, well, wait a minute, what do you mean by this? And in your mind, you're like, this is a word we use every day. Why are we defining this word? They want to be very precise with their answer, or they need to be precise with their answers. And so giving that level of specificity really helps them. So these are great pieces of advice that you can give a 7 through 10 in Fact Finder. But not all of us are 7 through 10s in Fact Finder. So we could end up giving some of that bad advice. Here's some terrible advice you can give to someone who's in that 7 to 10 range. You don't need to read the whole thing, just get the summary. Doesn't work for them. Can they do it and suck it up? Yes, but you're not going to get your best from them. Other things. Don't worry about the details, don't sweat the small stuff. They laser in on the small stuff. That's their jam. That's what they do. So don't tell them not to worry about it. Right? Keep it short and sweet. They can, but that's not when they're at their best. So If you're working with someone who's a 7 through 10 in fact finder or they work for you, give them that advice on the top. Avoid giving them that advice on the bottom, even if that's how you would naturally do it. All right. So, what about 7 through 10s in follow through, right? Different strength. So, 7 through 10s in follow through, build a plan and a backup plan and a backup plan for the backup plan. I know to some of us, like me, I'm a 3 in follow through. You don't need all those plans because stuff is going to break and we're going to change it anyway. For me, yes, that's true. If you're a 7 through 10 in follow through, let them build that plan and think through all the scenarios and the what ifs. All right. Tell them to sort the pieces of a puzzle. When you're trying to solve a problem, there are lots of components that go into solving that problem. Let them sort through it and see all the pieces. Then they'll start coming up with the solution. Or, right, things are changing all of the time. And it seems like it's going faster and faster and faster. Okay, we have to deal with reality. That's fine. These things are going to change, but what's going to stay the same? You give them that advice, that's where they thrive. Terrible advice, just go with the flow. Does it seem nice? Does it be like, yes, but we wouldn't have as many problems if we just went with the flow? Maybe, but because these folks map out all of the steps, they see potential plans down the road. So they don't just go with the flow. They don't need to. Or, right, figure it out as you go. We don't need a plan. For me, that is awesome. That's generally how I do most things. But someone with a 7 through 10, don't give them that advice. All right. What if you're working with a 7 through 10 in quick start? Here's some great advice. Race the clock, tight deadlines, compress timelines. That's where they do their best work. They get all those creative juices in their mind flowing. That's where they get their best ideas, right? Or just go for it and see what happens. Experiment. Let them try things. Sometimes it's going to be amazing. Sometimes it's going to blow up. That's okay. The amazing is really amazing. You have to give them the freedom to go out and try things. The other end of that coin, make it perfect. Right? That is terrible advice for a 7 through 10 because they're going to keep trying and experimenting things. If they have to slow down and wait before and make sure it's perfect before they go and launch that thing, you're losing all that momentum. Or follow the script. So I am allergic to scripts. If you put one in front of me, I am stumbling, bumbling, fumbling. It is not going to go well. If I have to read every single word and every single line, that's no good. So if you have a 7 through 10 in quick start, can you give them an outline or some general guidance on like, hey, roughly say this? 100%. But if it's on, the fourth word you must say is that, they're going to struggle in that environment. All right. 7 through 10's an implementer, right? Remember, these are hands-on. They need to feel it, touch it, taste it kind of folks. So here's some great advice for them. Use the best possible tools to craft your solutions, right? Use those high quality tools because they create really, really high quality solutions. Other tips, communicate in person whenever possible. I know we all have Zoom and Teams and Slack and email and text and all of the things. For a 7 through 10 implementer, face to face is always best. Use scale models or props, right? If someone is talking about an airplane, me, Lori, we can roughly picture an airplane in our head. 7 through 10 an implementer, let them use a prop, a scale model, something like that, as they're talking about an airplane. What's the worst advice you can give these people? Describe what's in your mind, right? Instead, let them build that scale model instead of just trying to say, oh, I see this. Let them start moving pieces around in the physical world. Look, but don't touch. They need to grab things, touch them, taste them, smell them for it to be real. So I get a question, Lori, go for it.
Yep. Just wanted to see how can we get a copy of the slides? So, because this is all really great information, so they're not writing everything down, but they can really focus on your words.
Yeah, so we won't be releasing a copy of the slides. However, I think either tomorrow or the next day, you'll get a copy of the replay. I think we put it on YouTube. So you'll definitely get that link. And all of this advice that I'm giving, I stole from reports we've already created. We have communication reports and coaching reports and team reports. I stole all of this advice from those reports. So it is out there, it's already in the world. So, and you don't need to write everything word for word. All right. So, again, simple ways how to give actionable advice to those folks that work for you during your annual reviews. Look at their Kolbe results. If they have a 7 through 10 in these, give them that, great advice and avoid doing the bad advice to wherever their results fall. And again, 1, 5, 10, all of them are strengths. I'm just trying to give you a simple framework. Look for the highest number. All right. Right? We talked about it, right? There are some amazing pieces of advice and there are some not good pieces of advice. We all have our own perspective. We all have stuff that works for us. And especially as new leaders, I know there was somebody who was a new leader on the call, said it's your first time, doing annual reviews, right? You have things that make you successful. That's why you're now in that manager, that leader seat. But the way you did it may not be how you can most effectively help those people that you lead. So find the advice that's right for them, right? I can't tell you how many times as a child and even as a grown up, I heard stop procrastinating. Unintentionally, those folks were sending me down the wrong path. I now intentionally procrastinate because I know that time frame is what really gets it going. That's where I have my best ideas. So just look at that individual, treat them as an individual, and they don't have to do it your way. As long as we can agree on the end result, right? It's got to cost this much, be done by this date, you got to hit this number, whatever that end is. Cool. Now let's just help them find their own path to getting to the end result we're both looking for. All right. So we can first focus on the individual, understand the strengths that they have. Now we can coach them a little bit more effectively. We know what their superpowers are. That helps us get some clarity. Another way we can get some clarity is by understanding how do they see their job, right? Because anywhere where there is a difference between that person and how they see their job, that's where now they're starting to struggle. They're feeling some of that stress and they're not performing at their best because they're trying to be someone else. They're trying to go outside of their strengths. So, this is a real example. This is the real me, and this is the real how I see my job. It's pretty close, but there are some differences you notice in the blue one in follow through. So I'm basically coaching myself away from success. If you spot this, well, if you have this clarity on the person and on their job, now you can start to develop clear, actionable plans. Right? Hey, Eric, you think you need to, follow structures that are already in place? That's not actually the case. That's not actually my expectations. Instead, we want you to adapt and come up with shortcuts and find simpler ways to do things because that's what you're already good at and that's a part of what we need. So if you have objective data, instead of just saying, oh, well, I don't know, do better, or I don't know, just kind of change the way that you're doing things. That's not super helpful. But if we can say, hey, Eric, when you're looking at things, see how if you can cut out one step, that's an actionable plan that someone can give to me that I can implement right away. But we have to have that clarity first. Who's the person? How do they see their job? So, as I mentioned, right, we asked you all a bunch of questions when you signed up and said, hey, what are you interested in? Why are you joining this webinar? And while you said it in different ways, there was a bunch of questions around this, right? How do I make my reviews better, more impactful? How do they make a difference? Something like that. So we've been talking about the things that can absolutely help with that, right? So it's give impactful feedback, not vague. We want to be objective and we want to be precise when we're giving that feedback. To help with this, you could just go back to that person's Kolbe A results. And if you look at pages 5 through 8 of their Kolbe results, you're going to get something that looks like this. We call them our do's and our don'ts. Very simply, we want them to do more of these and we want them to do less of these. So let's say Lori and I are having a conversation and Lori is doing my review. She is going to encourage me. She wants me to find shortcuts, right? Keep what's easy to use right within my site. That's actionable stuff that she can tell me to do that's going to lean into my strengths. And she can say, hey, Eric, I noticed you've been following things step by step by step by step. That's probably really frustrating and it's draining your energy. Knock it off. Right? If Lori gives me that feedback, now I'm empowered to do that, to find those shortcuts. So we have one of these for each of the modes: red, blue, yellow, green. So you can go through their Kolbe results, look at pages 5 through 8. Hey, I need you to do more of these. I need you to do less of these. And if you need some prompting or you want a great question to ask during the review, what can you, right? So if Lori's asking me, hey, Eric, what can you do more of? What can you do less of to improve your performance, right? These things are going to help you be better. And if you stop doing this stuff, it's going to get that stress off of your plate, and then you can perform at a little bit of a higher level. So it's just ways to use the Colbier. It's information you should already have on yourself and on the folks on your team. All right. I know there were more than just one question. Y'all had lots of questions when you signed up for this. So now we want to open it up, and in the chat, just fire away with your questions. What else would you like to know, or how can we help you make your reviews more effective, more fun, all that cool stuff?
Um, a great questions was asked for loving the suggestions for good and bad advice for 7 through 10. Would suggestions be opposite for 1 to 3? What about 4 to 6? But I kind of think you also covered it within the pages in the A to A or in our Colby A results, pages 5 through 8, because it'll highlight the do's and don'ts.
Yeah, and honestly, if I tried to walk you through all of that, you would have this crazy matrix it's too hard to keep it straight in your mind unless you're trained in Colby and you do this stuff all the time. I'm trying to help you, like, what are like 4 or 5 of the most impactful things that you can use. Just look at their highest number and give them advice based on that. That will absolutely get you going in the right path.
How soon after a job, role, or accountability change should a person take or retake their Colby B? What a great question.
That's a great question, Kimberly. About 90 days. Because, right, the first couple of weeks, you don't really know what you're doing, right? You're just kind of drinking from a fire hose, stuff is coming at you, and you're just getting it done however you can get it done. And then you have conversations with your leader and you start to kind of adjust course a little bit. By about 90 days, you should have a pretty solid handle on, hey, this is how my job needs to be done. At that point, have the person take the Colby B. And as from the leader perspective, if there are big differences between the A and the B, that gives you enough time to course correct. So, right, we can close that gap, coach them back to being themselves. Because if we go a lot longer than that, they're going to just continue to go further and further off course.
I love what Colby said. It wasn't quite a question, but I think there's an important piece that maybe we can talk a little bit about. But he said, when using Colby, I've yet to find a person that doesn't like to hear about themselves and their strengths, especially when it is true science behind it that Colby uniquely has and can so easily relate. This is life-changing for so many. I love working with Donovan. He's great. But also, maybe we can touch a little bit on the research and validity.
Yeah, so yes, thank you, Donovan, and absolutely, that's the cool part about what we get to do is we have these amazing conversations with people every single day about their strengths. And so on the science side, we do what are called validity and reliability studies. Think of validity as we're making sure that we're accurately measuring what we're supposed to, right? And so we work with our research partners to ensure that, right, as someone is taking it, we really are identifying that they're a 8 in fact finder or a 2 in fact finder. And Lori put the link in if you really want to dig into the research. Then we have what are called validity or reliability studies. Think of it like test, retest. So I take it at a point in the future, I take it again. We've done those at 2, 5, 10, and 20-year intervals. Over 90% of the time, we see no significant statistical change in the results. In plain English, it doesn't really change over time. Could you go from a 7 to an 8, from a 2 to a 3? Sure. Practically speaking and statistically speaking, it's still the same result. You wouldn't notice a difference between an 8 and a 9 or a 2 and a 3. And to another point that you made there, Donovan, everybody's favorite subject is themselves. I'm sure they love their family. I'm sure they're friends with their dog and they love their hobbies and they love their business, all of that stuff. We're humans. All of our favorite subjects is us. want to say thank you from myself, the rest of the Kolbe team. Uh, you can email me directly if you have questions or go to info@kolbe.com and we will connect you with the right person so we can help make your interviews easier and more fun.